Okay, hi, welcome back. It's been a while. This is the Who Am I podcast with Stephen and William. Today's topic is going to be a mixture of things, but mostly starting off with self-love and what ways we can improve, I guess, about loving ourselves and having self-esteem, and where the root maybe of lack of self-esteem comes from, and how we can develop and change that. I think that's kind of probably what we're going to be covering today. Because I think you can agree on this, William, is we both, from a young age into our early adults, did not have good self-esteem. I think that's probably fair to say.
Yeah, humility was always given a high position.
Yes, but it was a lie. It was a lie. It was false humility.
Explain.
In my opinion. So modesty and humility, depending on your definition and culture, can be a way to basically make you timid and weak. Like if it's not the correct combination of humility again and confidence and self-love. So I think in British culture we have a very over here we have a very much don't make a fuss, don't cause an issue, and that's seen as being humble and modest. That's dangerous in my opinion now. Like as I've got older and realized that actually that turns you into a doormat. You have to have that humility to know when to oh, hey, you know what, it's okay, just let things go. But you have to have that confidence and that self-love to be able to stand up and go, no, actually, I'm not going to just be quiet and humble, I guess. I guess what is proper humility then? I guess was probably a good place to start.
So you just described appeasement, right? Or being a doormat as the wrong kind of humility.
Yeah.
So what's a positive type of humility? Because it's not all bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to think about. That's the sort of question I'm trying to ask as well.
When, for example, when you have mastered a skill or when you've overcome a huge hurdle, will you go out and show everyone that you're better than them because you've accomplished something that they haven't yet? Or will you just be with them at their level and just be there when they're prepared to take the steps that you've taken, and maybe they ask for your advice? And then will you be condescending or will you be encouraging?
I guess like we talked about before, it's not I keep repeating it's like a parrot, but it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So you can be good at something and be the best in the world. If you then tell everyone I'm the best in the world, you're all rubbish. You know, that's pride. That's a lot. That's
sounds like rappers.
Nice. But then you get into the whole fake it till you make it concept as well. You get into that, which is an interesting concept, but we'll try and stay on track a little bit. With, I guess, proper healthy humility is knowing the thing but not needing to prove the thing. And again, it's flexibility in a way.
Yeah, we talked about flexibility offline, and you made this interesting example of a dictator or psychopath. They are confident in what they're doing. They believe in themselves. Otherwise they wouldn't have the energy and the momentum to keep going. But and that shows you that confidence and sticking to one thing isn't always a good thing. You need to stay adaptable, flexible, and
be willing to accept when you're wrong. Maybe that's what humility is. Maybe that's a root of it, is being able to accept when you're wrong and be like, you know what, hands up, that was my mistake. But then that goes to an extreme as well, where people take that, like they will always be happy or okay or not happy, but like take on the blame just to to appease, to make it easier. So let's say in an argument, argument, whatever, and the situation isn't healthy and you should probably speak up about it, but you don't. I guess it depends on the specific situation, because actually it's probably sometimes right to not escalate the argument and actually be humble and just accept that situation. Other times going, hey, I am wrong. Actually being wrong is good, but saying you're wrong when you're not actually wrong, that's an interesting concept, because are you damaging your own psyche and being by taking on a lie? Because if the other person is technically wrong, but you go, oh, okay, oh yeah, sorry, I'm wrong, just to diffuse the situation, is that healthy?
It's very tricky. So I've also thought about this responsibility many times before. Some people take on too much responsibility, like you explained. They will take the blame for things that they actually didn't cause, and other people don't take on enough responsibility. They could do with more self-criticism, or they feel entitled and always blame someone else. And as long as people do it just quietly without telling someone else, I blame you, it's fine. It never there's not so much conflict. But when you were trying to figure out the perceived responsibility and what you call technical or actual responsibility, I don't think that there might not be such a thing. There might not be objective justice. I'm not sure myself. I haven't thought it through this far, but it certainly helps me whenever I apply this parent trick, where when you watch two children fight over something, you have a bigger picture. You know how insignificant the thing that they're fighting over actually is, and so if they are open and wise enough, you can help them see that bigger picture, and then they just won't care and think, oh, okay, you can have it, I don't care. but when adults don't have that parent figure that they trust to have a good relationship with to help them out in such situations, we just keep fighting. We might go to court, but who runs the courts? Other immature adults who are biased and
have their own objectives. And I think that as you were talking, it came into my mind that actually it's probably just down to us and how we feel and what we're okay with. Because sometimes we think we're okay taking on that responsibility, and then years down the line, we're holding on to regret about it, or resent the situation that we had to be the one to take on the ownership of responsibility, when actually it should have been shared responsibility, maybe. But if we can process that as an individual and take it on board and it be healthy and go, you know what, then release that energy and be like, you know what, I've taken responsibility for that. That's fine. I'm okay with that. And then letting it go. That's probably, again, part of actual humility, where actually we are able to then just let it go. If we then hold on to it, again, that's essence of pride amongst what we think is humility, because we're not letting go of, oh, I'm always the one that has to, again, take on the losing side of the argument, or whatever the situation is. We can fall into that trap so easily. And I think that we were raised to, at least I was, to, and my personality is as well, I guess, again, nature, nurture, is to do that, is to actually just de-escalate conflict, avoid conflict, and therefore always just take the blame. Be like, okay, you know what, my fault, I'm sorry, move on. And I think I still do that, but again, I do it in a healthier way. But I also now very much am happy to stand up and go, no, let's talk about this. This doesn't feel right, that you're blaming me for this or whatever. Go through a process. If the person still doesn't understand, or doesn't want to understand, or doesn't agree, then at least you tried. You know that you had that confidence and self-aware and self-esteem to fight for yourself, fight for your beliefs, fight for a situation, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we have this naive notion of justice, and we want things to be set right. And I love that part of the Christian gospel is to help us unlearn that and realize that mercy is the way to go. Now, that doesn't mean that you should just allow anything to happen. We should always attempt to do what is right. And we have talked in another episode about criminal justice, and that it has its merit to a certain degree, even though it's very imperfect. So let's not go down that road again. But
yeah, there's so many things came to my mind about, again, that I want to start talking about, but then I don't know if we did it before or not. But let's stick to the love stuff, because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. Let me give you another example. A situation that I've been in many times. When someone does something wrong, let's say to me, like someone does something and I feel pain because of it, then I want them to feel bad about it, probably in order for them to be motivated to no longer do it. And I'm not so aggressive that I will physically hurt them to give them pain. I will usually try to use words. And there are words that are meant, I say them in order for that person to feel bad. But what is the only way for that person to feel bad? It's when they tell themselves something to punish themselves, right? Actually, it's impossible for me to cause someone to feel bad emotionally, mentally.
Yeah, they have to be the one to actually let it happen in themselves.
Right. Yeah, they have to accept what I say and believe it and reinforce it internally. But what are even the words? I might not know this person that well. If I do know some pain point, I might push there. But usually I use words to try to hurt someone that I use to hurt myself all the time.
Yeah. And well, the root of that is you want connection, because you've now lost that connection with that person because they've hurt you or whatever. If they then feel a similar pain, then they will then be able to have compassion and empathize with you, and then their connection will be built. Like there'll be that connection, and I guess that's probably one of the reasons why we had those responses.
But it's not really healthy, is it?
Oh no.
Ideally, neither of us
again. Yeah.
Ideally, neither of us would have any of these self stories, like telling ourselves that we're bad, or these beliefs that we're bad and worthless.
Guilt is an issue. Like I have had levels of guilt for such silly little things to the point of wanting to not exist. So like that's the level of guilt inside myself or whatever, and it's so toxic and unhealthy. And I think a lot of Christian societies have, over the centuries, millennia, embedded in cultures a feeling of guilt instead of confidence and trust. Like again, fear, anxiety, guilt are all linked. Trust, love, hope are linked. And it's like, which way, and faith, which way are you going to teach people? Are you going to teach them to fear, or are you going to teach them to hope and have love? And it seems that for whatever reason, fear has been the preferred chosen way. Once I got rid of that side of things in myself, oh my goodness, again, that self-love, we want to be the main sort of chat today, is it blossoms once you dampen that guilt. But because most people are good people deep down, like we only behave selfishly because we're just trying to fight to survive. Like in this world, we live in a world where we've not learned to work together effectively, and through different systems, we separate ourselves. We're isolated in to a degree that we feel we have to do things ourselves and we have to work ourselves, and that separates us from other people, and therefore we don't know how to focus on, again, the positive hope and love and faith and belief in ourselves. We're just too busy distracted by just trying to survive.
Right. Yeah, I wonder where that comes from. There was a time when you could just greet someone on the street and they would be happy that you did it. And now they don't even want eye contact. Or if you look at their child or so, they will get very protective. And I guess it comes from negative experience, or the news of the possibility of something really bad happening is hyped up so much that you believe, or just what's it called, just extreme thinking, where just because this really terrible thing could happen, it doesn't matter how small the percentage or the likelihood of that is, just the possibility of that, the percentage being larger than 0% means that I must avoid that.
That's an interesting, difficult one here, because, let's take theft or murder or something like that, where, yeah, it happens a lot, we think. Well, it does, I guess. But again, it stops us from making choices, even though the percentage is almost minimal. Yeah, we have to, again, it's risk management, isn't it? It's risk management and learning every day we walk across roads that actually, if we're not paying attention, we can be killed.
Right.
And that's okay. But we fear to go outside and walk through the high street because we might get stabbed. Like, it's a strange spectrum of some choices are okay to make and some aren't, even though relatively speaking they're the same choice.
Yeah, so this gets into black and white thinking, what I was mentioning offline. I've found in myself, in my hidden covert beliefs inside of me, that there are many situations that I avoid because of the potential bad that could come from them. What's a good example? Yeah, when someone is overconfident, when someone puts too much stock in themselves, and then does whatever serves them best at the cost of everyone else, then that example shows me confidence is a bad thing. And my black and white thinking, which might come from protective child mechanisms, protective thinking from childhood, where you're in survival mode.
Yeah, and it's easier to believe in absolutes. It's easier to believe in a black and white because it's just an absolute, and therefore it feels concrete until you get older and realize that blah 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 blah. But anyway, we're getting to that now.
Yeah. So the black and white thinking then is all confidence is bad, and I must never come close to it. And then I have apparently I have automatic mechanisms that will protect me from becoming confident by hurting myself and not allowing myself to ever go near the situation where I might start to believe in myself and try to help others do what I did because I did a good thing and because I'm a good person in this respect and I want other people to get there too. And so this came up it's come up many times in my life, but the most recent time was when I was trying to put together a product to sell online. And the marketing for it has been a huge hurdle for me because it's necessary for me to believe in myself. I already believe in the product. I've tried it several years now, and I know it can help others too. But I need to believe in myself. At least I need to. Well, I do need to believe in myself. Otherwise, I cannot expect anyone else to believe in me, and they won't believe in the product unless they first believe in me. So this has forced me to confront this weakness again. It is possible to go through life without ever working on this. It will probably cause you to have a miserable life. But I think it's normal for everyone to just avoid complexes like this until they can no longer avoid them.
I completely agree in the respect about avoiding seeing negative confident examples and therefore avoiding it. Again, we all go through the process. When we see something, we analyze and we decide whether we want to adopt that or reject that scenario. And so many confident people go from being self-aware and not self-aware, but like confident to then being selfish. Like I think it's a dangerous path. I think there's a point where with self-confidence and self-love and self-esteem, that you almost have a crossroads where you can either go down the arrogance, I'm amazing, I've accomplished this, I'm incredible, using that as a selfish mechanism and not a positive mechanism. So to get things for you and only you, and everyone else is just pathetic and like not as good as you because look what I've done and look at me. Then the other spectrum where it's actually, you know what, I've got here, yes, through my self-love and through my self-awareness, self-esteem, but now I can use this to show love, the love that I have for myself, to others, and help them find their self-love too. That's the difference, I think. That I don't think there's actually a massive amount of positive examples of that, at least in this country. I've met a lot of people in my life, and they're either super, again, that false humility where they are loving, good people, but struggled to have self-love and self-confidence because they are afraid, or, and again, that's okay. That's not a judgment. That's just an observation and how I am at times and have been. And any example of confidence and self-awareness is people that have made money by screwing over other people, or selfish and vote for things that are going to help them out. And yeah, and that's again black and whites, because everyone does good and bad in little ways, but the majority of things that I've seen those two separate groups do, and therefore with those two options, I would rather be the humble doormat than be the arrogant, confident, walk over people kind of person. They walk over people to get what they want. And that's the examples that are shown most frequently in my society.
In the media too.
In the media as well.
Yeah.
You very rarely see those self-confident people that actually are helping people, because they're self-confident, but I guess they don't want to be seen about it. That's probably what it is. Maybe they just don't want to show it unless they need to. Maybe.
Yeah. So let's talk. So we've identified the problem. Let's talk about some ways
how to get there.
Yeah.
Yep,
it seems like there's this path that would be ideal, balanced.
Yep.
And that we sway, or maybe this is the natural way to go about it, that we sway back and forth between being too humble and too confident.
I think you're right. Yep.
And the goal is to sway less and less over time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the question I ask myself, but will ask you, is when did you first, I guess, realize you wanted to now start focusing on self-love? And are you comfortable saying you love who you are as a person? That's a very interesting question.
It's come up several times in my life, but the time I can think of that was most intense, where I recognized the need for self-love, was during and after my first relationship, because it turns out people cannot love each other unless they love themselves first.
Yeah, and it's such a true statement, and it's used in a cliche way, unfortunately, now, but it's so true and so important that you need to be able to be in a relationship. You have to be grounded in your own set of love.
Yeah, it's normal for two people to have different values,
of course,
and perspectives and ways that they've developed to deal with certain situations. But then when they come together, it becomes more complicated, because now you need to really understand yourself, at least in areas that are pertinent for the harmony to work out. And I think that's what forced me to go into this. And it was too big of a problem to be overcome in the short time that you have for the relationship to survive. It wasn't that strong, that deep. And since, as you can see, that we're talking about this topic today, because it's still relevant to me in my personal development. And so I wonder what it would be like now if I attempted to build a relationship.
What ends up happening with relationships I've observed is one person will have a stronger level of self-confidence or love for themselves. Maybe not love, but I don't know. The other person will have less, and the other person will just adopt the stronger person's way of doing things, unless they say no, this isn't going to work, because again, it becomes a dependency relationship.
Right.
That's again toxic and bad, whatever. So unless you actually fully love yourself, you're just going to fall into that other person's way of doing things and loving things, or way they do things. Again, it might not be love, because again, we're using that term a bit loosely. It could be like their energy or their belief system or philosophies that you then just adopt because you haven't fully grounded yourself in your own, again, you being anyone, your own values, I guess, and your own love for yourself.
Well, I had some kind of system going.
Yeah,
I can't say I was happy or well-rounded, but you know, at every time in our life we have fears and avoid certain situations to stay in our comfort zone because we think that this is kind of working. Let's stay here for the foreseeable future. But then sometimes painful situations will force you out of your comfort zone. And if you can, what's even better is when you choose to leave your comfort zone, when you voluntarily go into a painful place with the intent, not just to feel pain, but obviously with the intent of expanding yourself, of working on yourself and becoming stronger in an area. And I think initially you need to be forced before you even understand that it's possible for things to be different and that it's worth going through the painful area.
That is so spot on. Again, that like what I have seen happen is that you have to usually have to be forced. First of all, again, something happens that pushes you into that painful area. Then you go for that pain, and then you come out of it being like, oh, that makes sense. I needed that to get away from that. I need to get out of my comfort zone. And then you start to realize that actually you can do this yourself. You can actually go through a process of going, actually, this doesn't feel comfortable. I'm not happy here. Let's consciously force myself, and usually again into a more painful situation short term, which will then lead to a happier situation long term. Again, talked about this before, where the problem is that we tend to not think far enough in our spectrum of time or existence. So anything that happens to us, if it's easier, we just adopt that. It's like, okay, that's easier to do. That's my comfort zone. Let's just stay in here. Let's just sit fixed to that, because that feels safe and good. But again, short term, it ends up leading to long term unhappiness and trapped feelings, and we almost have to again go through that process, break out of it. And then that leads to that love side of things, where you actually start realizing that you gain respect for yourself in a way. You gain a self-respect that you're like, actually, I'm not going to compromise these easy comfort zones just for short-term safety. I actually want happiness. I want proper happiness. I don't want just to get by. I don't want just to have the okay scenario. I want to be love, to be a being of love, a being of happiness. And going out of our comfort zones will lead to situations long term that will give us happiness, because you can then gain confidence from it. You can then go, wow, I did that. I took myself out. And it's realizing no matter what consequence happens, even if it ends up something happens, your circumstances get worse, for example, let's say, whether it's financially or health, again, short term, and let's say that happens, we shouldn't quantify that as a failure. That's again a massive problem with love and self-love, is that we quantify things incorrectly. We think that, oh, I failed, and therefore we hate ourselves and we think we've done wrong. And actually, it's just perspective. That's us doing that. We're being a victim. We have to slowly learn how to go, no, yes, I may be in a situation that feels worse in some ways, but actually it was better than what I was in. It's taken me out of that situation. And take time to celebrate that. I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about that, actually, how we go for goal, constantly just doing goals, setting ourselves achievements, succeeding in them or achieving them, and then moving on to the next one. There's no time spent going, well done me, that's awesome. Because we should. It's not pride. It's we've just spent years trying to achieve something, for example, as an example, you know, and we have a night of celebration going, yeah, I did it, and then we move on. It's like, that's so unequal in its proportions of hard work to celebration and showing ourselves that we love ourselves and going, yeah, well done.
There's something in psychology called the hero's journey, and I haven't looked into it, but I just heard about it recently. It's something about a process that everyone can go through, and it's healthy to go through. And so I just know very rudimentary how it goes. You descend into the depths, which is, you know, some difficult situation, something painful, and then down there you overcome something. I just have to think of Luke Skywalker right now.
Oh yeah, it's a classic. It's a classic.
So so this is a topic often used in stories that become very famous, probably because a lot of people can relate to it.
Yeah.
And so once you've overcome that weakness, you're stronger, you come back out of the depths, and then you're among your own again. And so now you're a hero, maybe in your own mind, maybe in someone else's mind, you know, not necessarily to brag. And now it's up to you to decide what to do with that. Like you said earlier, will you brag, or will you just be humble about it and prepared to offer other people advice who want to or have to undergo a similar process?
Yeah. Think about other ways that we can help ourselves to get to that point where we like love ourselves. Because I asked you the question earlier, and it was a good answer in the sense that you again see things black and white, and then you go through that process of trying to figure out
I'll tell you
go for it.
a concrete thing that I did at the last few days to help myself get out of black and white thinking, because I'm not in therapy. I used to be, but I got sick of it. I think
ditto. Yeah,
I mean, at a certain point, it's good to have external help,
without question.
But by now I'm able to find things. I'm good enough to find methods myself that will help me. And one thing that I did recently to help myself get out of black and white thinking is, okay, I've come to a point where I can recognize that I have black and white thinking. Let's say again about the confidence thing, and I know some reasons for it. It might be childhood protective mechanisms. So now I believe that every type of confidence is bad, and whenever my brain goes in the direction of, but what if confidence is good? It's like an electric shock. I have to distance myself from it again, because that's just bad, death. I don't know, something nondescript really. So what's the opposite of black and white? Well, indiscernible, gray, unknowable until you've tried it yourself. But because I'm a very theoretical mental person, and I don't always learn best by just experiencing and just doing it. I respect some people work better that way, but I first need to build a mental construct to guide myself to the action. I built this construct like deliberately while I was in the shower. It helps me calm down somehow. So this is what I did. Let's assume that there is good confidence, or that there is a good form of self-worth and self-respect that doesn't necessarily lead to something bad. Let's just assume, just like you do with mathematical proofs. You assume that something exists, and then you show that the assumption is correct, or you show that the assumption leads to a contradiction, and then you know that the assumption was wrong. But I just started with an assumption, which was not a signal that caused my brain to say you're going to die. And then I let that simmer. I didn't do an actual logical proof in my mind.
Yeah.
It's actually not useful for me to do it so explicitly. I just
let it bake for a while. It's like a little cake.
Which means I trust my self-conscious to fill in the gaps and to finish the proof, basically. And so I let it sit. I do something else because I don't want to think about it explicitly. I might sleep. That's also a huge help for the subconscious to work. And then afterwards, I realized that, oh, it's actually possible for confidence to not be dangerous.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to go out into the world and try it. Now that I know that it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
That was my process, and
that's beautiful.
It's
process.
Liberating.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's freeing. It's liberating. And the next stage of the process will be that actually some people won't understand the confidence and the like the changes, but then some will. Again, you're going to have different reactions to this scenario. But what's part of it is that you've now got to a point where this is what feels okay to do as part of who you are as a person. And again, it's going through that process time and time again until it becomes established, I guess. Because my always thing is that I think I was always a reasonably confident person. I think I was. I used to go out dancing all the time, didn't care how, go to club, and just it took ages to build up that process as a teenager, but I got there pretty fast. In terms of projecting an aura of confidence, but inside actually being very insecure, still very many fears, many worries, and then health stuff. Lost a lot of the material things of life. Lost the ability to help people the way I used to, if that makes any sense. So a lot of my self-worth was based on the ability to go and do things for others. And then once that was taken away from me, it was a loss of, I lost confidence, I lost personality, lost my identity in a way, but then rebuilt it when I realized over again a process of months and years that people still liked me, even though I wasn't helping them with things. It was so foreign to my individual programming over life that actually I was just me being me was enough. Like just being in someone's company for half an hour, an hour, chatting away was actually a positive experience for me and them. I didn't need to go and drive them 3 hours somewhere else to get them to somewhere or help them move or give them money for bus or food or whatever, these things. And it was just like, maybe I am good. Maybe I am a nice person. Maybe just me being me is, and people had actually tried to tell me that. People had actually tried to I have friends from uni that were like, we would talk about religion and blah, blah, and they're just like, but you're a good person anyway. You don't need that extra. And yes and no, I still have different qualms about it. Those things help shape me, the moral standing of some of the religious upbringing. Even though, I reject other parts of it. But even with those swept away, yeah, I can, people still again love me. And so therefore I'm like, wow, that's cool. And then I just, started to learn to love myself. I was like you say, it's liberating, freeing to have that confidence that, hey, I'm good. I don't need any more than what I am already. But as I do more, then that's good too, in terms of self-development, self-awareness. And I try to tell people that all the time. I try to be like, look, you are a beautiful person as you are. Whatever goals you have, whatever things you want to achieve, excellent, that's phenomenal. But you, as you right now, are incredible and beautiful and do so much good in the world just by simply being you. And we don't get told that enough. Like we're always constantly told to develop and do stuff. And it's like, no. I mean, sure, go do that if you want to, but we've missed a step. We've missed a step in the process. Where actually just again, most of us aren't going to go murder or steal something or like punch someone in the face for no reason. Like most of us are good, loving people, and for some reason that's not enough for society. And so we have to go back to the drawing board and go, actually, it's enough for me. It's enough for me as a person, as an individual, to have that. And I think that's hard for people, and that's very difficult to get to that stage for people.
You've helped me several times realize that I'm judging myself using external factors, like success, whatever way I define success for myself, like with money, influence.
And it's okay to do all that, but again,
Yeah.
it's okay to do those things, but it's the root of inside you. What is the root?
Yeah, what's the motivation to
Yeah.
pursue that goal? Do you make your self-worth dependent on that, or is it voluntary?
Yeah.
And often we don't realize what is driving us in that direction. But maybe that's the only way for it to ever be a problem anyway. And so it's natural for these things to be hidden until we take the time or receive the pain to make us aware. When I was a PhD student, I didn't realize how much I was comparing myself to others and adopting the value measure that others were using, which is how much have you published, where have you published, how much are you being cited, and maybe how big are the grants that you're getting, stuff like that. And it's stupid, for someone outside of academia, they'll say, what? That's stupid. That's childish. Who even cares about how much you've written? But when you're in it, it's not. It's your whole world. And so I'm really happy to see this this one initiative online by I don't remember their names, but it's called something like You're Enough, and it's particularly for PhD students because apparently it's a very common problem that I was going through. But now that I'm outside of academia, I can see that it's actually just a small part. Academia is a part of the economy at large, and they have their own way of seeing success. But in the end, it comes down to how much can you help other people make money, or solve some other practical problem.
Yes, yeah. I think we all have, like, again, the way I visualize it sometimes is that whole force field type mentality, where we all have spheres around us. If we have enough self-worth and self-esteem, and if we don't have enough and self-love, we go into other people's spheres and we get influenced by that. So you go into academia, or into politics or into whatever, and you can start off as reasonably naive or excited by this situation. Because you haven't got that force field around you, you go in there and you start adopting their values. Their values affect you and influence you. And most systems, again, business, politics, whatever, most of it's very toxic. Again, most of the systems we have, self-serving, you'll be working hard for someone else's benefit. Like in terms of money, like again, you'll be you're getting a reward, again, whether it's the PhD itself or money grants or whatever, but ultimately you are working to make someone that's probably already rich richer. Like that's most of the systems that we live in. And so it's realizing, I think, first of all, we have to get our own level of confidence in our own sphere so that those external values don't affect us. We can go into them, you can go do a PhD, or you can go into working banks or working politics, whatever, and have enough of a force field of self-love and self-esteem and self-awareness and self-respect. Those values don't change or influence you. And I think that maybe is what, to me, again, everyone has probably different definitions, but self-love is. It's being grounded enough in yourself that you know your values, you know your motivations, you're flexible, but also you have a force field. I mean, to me, that's kind of how I've tried to be the last few years. It's worked. I'm so happy. Like I've never been this consistently happy in my life, and I don't have anything. Like I mean, I do. I feel privileged to have food, hot water, and a roof over my head. Like I have those things, and I'm so grateful for those. And I want to have more. I want to work towards more, but I don't need to have those things. I'm very lucky, and I try not to take it for granted that I live in a country where, with my health stuff, I've been given benefits to survive. I get money from the taxes and stuff that allow me to live Yeah, sometimes I wish I could go do more extreme things to feel alive, but I've realized and become very comfortable in the knowledge that all I need is those things I talked about and some connections with people. People are what matter. People are what we should be kind of, what brings happiness, maybe. There's many things that can bring happiness, but having those connections, I think with the isolation of COVID and all those kind of things, a lot of people have realized that when you don't have those connections, it leads to unhappiness.
Yeah, you start to miss it because you didn't, well, now you realize how valuable it was.
Yeah.
I sometimes see myself as just getting rid of problems. And where did those come from? Well, I don't want to get too deep into it, but nature and nurture. I think people are born, I don't know if it's genetic or it's like I'm a container full of problems, and maybe God is watching and to see how, what will it take for him to get rid of this problem, or to take the time and effort to work on it. And then with time, I become more and more empty. And it's so fun to do that. Like you said, we don't need external stuff to be happy. They can make us happy temporarily, but not essentially. And
they can bring comfort and security, but yeah, as you say, not happiness.
So I'm starting to understand how these gurus in India can be homeless and just have nothing and feel like they've actually achieved a lot. But I don't think, at least right now, I don't think that it's necessary to get rid of everything. Attachment is something I think they talk about a lot. It's not good to be dependent on the stuff in your life, or other things like the feeling of success. And once you are able to be yourself independently of it, then it doesn't matter. It's like what we talked about earlier, that the attachment is voluntary. It's no longer to fill some unhealthy need that you seem to have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through a process of, let's say they're young, they are successful in business or whatever, gain a lot of money, and then haven't gone through a process of determining their value system. And so for their value system is based around that money, that success. And then it perpetuates, and that's again just how they gain happiness for themselves in their perceived happiness, I guess. And they learn the lessons that I think we're learning in a different way, because again, they will potentially later on in life get ill or lose that money or whatever, or end up alone. You hear that story so often that people just they lose their friends and whatever else, and become lonely over time. And it's not until they're like 50, 60, like again, they enjoy and they party, they have a good life, but then they realize that actually it's empty. It's helped because again, having that security, having that comfort, but they lack something. They lack something very important. Again, that's what we've been talking about today. That process of realizing what is happiness and love, again, self-love. That I think a lot of people like us and other people I know are going through that process before they become successful. So that when they do become successful, what they have will have more value in helping other people. They'll be able to use that to benefit rather than just using it for stuff and then learning the lessons. Learn the lessons now so that you can actually then benefit a wider range of people. That's my own personal belief. Again, that's just random Stephen stuff. Because I think whether it's God or the universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever chaos system we believe in, I do think there's purpose. I do believe I've too many coincidences to sound cliche, to think that what we go through it does have value to us, or we can give it value, if nothing else. And therefore, through self-fulfilling prophecy, if I kind of mentioned it earlier, I guess the whole fake it till you make it is such an important aspect actually of self-love, because you have to tell yourself over time that you love yourself, even if you don't believe it fully. And eventually you do start realizing it. You go through a process of being like, oh, like I did that well, and I love that I did that, and I love me that I did that. And then deep down, a little voice will go, oh, you're not worth it, or you're not valuable enough, or you're rubbish, or whatever. And then the more you start to say those things and think those things, that I love myself or done well in this thing, I think over months and years, it becomes the louder voice. And then you do actually then suddenly go, actually, you know what? Yeah, I do fully love myself for all these different things. It's not just and I always rejected that system for a long time. I rejected the whole fake it till you make it because it feels like a lie. It feels like a non-truth. But I think it then can become a truth. That is very beneficial.
I've always been afraid of that method because it seems like manipulating myself into believing something. And so I don't do it so explicitly. I don't like say things to myself vocally, but I just create room for it. I allow it to be in my head and let my subconscious decide for itself over time what it wants to believe, because forcing the belief will not make it a true belief.
Interesting. Forcing the belief.
Or I think what you were describing is not forcing it, but just maybe you need to repeat it because you push it away, but it actually has value.
Like exercise, I guess. Like exercise. Like you have to exercise the thought process. And again, I don't think I've ever. I mean, again, everyone does things differently. I don't think I've ever done it vocally to myself, but it's when you're with people. I think I do it. So if I'm around people, I will be like, somebody will be like, "Oh, like, well done, that was awesome," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm awesome," and like in a positive affirmation, and making sure you tell other people that as well. Like again, make sure they know and are told, because again, if more people tell you something, the more actually likely you are to believe it.
Yeah.
So.
And I like the word exercise because that's how a lot of our brain works. Something like a message, a signal needs to be repeated over and over for the neural pathways to adapt to that. And then it will become true neurologically, not just mentally.
Yeah. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do.
Yeah.
Over time, again, it's small processes. I think God, the universe, turtle with elephants on top, whatever it is from Discworld, whatever the mechanic that it happens, I think life puts us in scenarios that helps us gain opportunities for this insight and to exercise this insight when we're ready, and before we're ready, to be fair, because we're never really ready. We just have to go through that painful process, to be fair. It's how it seems to be. It's how I've perceived it to be, at least.
Right. Yeah, this new perspective also helps me to be more thankful for the problems and weaknesses that I start out with, because without them, I wouldn't necessarily have the motivation to work on myself. But like we said in the beginning, at least that one time, it's usually by force. To choose the lesser of two pain sources, and then hopefully you gain enough momentum and realize the power you have to work on yourself, and it's very rewarding. It takes patience, but
that word, but yeah.
But I no longer feel so pressured by time or time wise to, oh no, I should have achieved this by this age. Maybe not.
Yeah. Mum always said, like, to me, she was like, just be gentle on yourself. You're always so like harsh on yourself. Just be gentle with yourself. And so I tried to, again, I've learned to be that way, like you say, with like trying to achieve things at certain times or whatever, just knowing that trusting the process, as they say, trust the process. That like you said just then about gratitude, is actually, it's a massive part of it, is being weirdly thankful for pain. I know that sounds weird, but like
It has its purpose. Yeah.
it has its purpose. And also we've talked about it before, the grief process. Like when we lose things, or when things change that are difficult, we must learn how to process it.
Yeah.
Otherwise it becomes a barrier and a hurdle that we can't get over. Once we learn how to get through grief and loss and change, it becomes easier. And like you say, it lightens us, it makes us freer. Yesterday when I was talking to this friend, we talked about the term like bulletproof. Like you just feel like you can kind of take on the world, because you don't need to. Again, that's the difference, is that you don't have to, but you want to, and feel it's okay to just be yourself, be who you are, and no one else's opinions or judgments will influence that unless you want it to.
You know how old people become more stagnant, take less risk, and will not be as willing to work on themselves anymore. I don't understand why, but I want to prevent myself from becoming that. I'm convinced that there's always more you can work on, so there's no excuse to stop working on yourself. One of my examples in that area is Bob Proctor. He's a coach. He's maybe 80 years old now, and is still very energetic. And I think that he had to work on that.
Again, it's work.
For example, he wants to learn to write with his left hand now. It's something he started working on recently.
I did that at high school. Like I did it for like a few weeks, then got bored. I was like, once I break my right arm, like I'm not gonna be able to write. So I started trying to learn how to write with my left arm.
I don't think that's his reason for it.
No, it's not. That's not. I guess it's not his motivation. But like you say, there's always things you can do. There's always something that you can do that will help you be more adaptable. Because that's probably what's doing it. He probably just feels like its value, again, whatever, it doesn't matter ultimately, the reasons behind it for him. But at that age to still be doing that is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So it's good to always have people around you, or in our age, follow people online who have achieved something that you still want to achieve, so that you never get lazy and you always see that there is room for progress.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for this. I wasn't sure in which direction it would go, but it's important to be aware of ourselves and the things we tell ourselves, and our value. We might need signals from outside in the beginning, but it's good to become more and more independent of that, and to be aware of our identity and our value, just independent of achievements. Just love yourself, people.
Yes, definitely. Agreed.